Hey everybody. I'm sitting in a park near my house. It's early. It's June. It's beautiful. It's like such a nice morning, and something came to mind that I have been kind of not avoiding. I guess avoiding is probably a good word, but in the best way considering the context. So about a week, maybe probably 2 weeks ago now, somebody asked me a question about a video that I had done before, and I'll link that video below, about why beating yourself up is a crappy strategy to create change. And through the dialogue back and forth, I offered to shoot another video to kind of take this topic a little bit deeper. And then I hadn't done it. And I committed to a certain date by which I would do it, and I didn't do it. And so I started to feel bad, and then it occurred to me this morning that it's actually the perfect scenario to explain why this whole system doesn't work and actually what really does help us create change. And this happens so much in my clients, not as much with me anymore, but it was definitely something I struggled with for a long time. And probably if I were to look more closely at my life, I would see places where this is probably really showing up that I'm not even seeing it. But the dilemma is this: there's a change we want to make, or even just an action that we want to take, and we just can't seem to bring ourselves to do it. And we get more and more and more frustrated that we're not doing it. And in that frustration, we turn that frustration on the self, on ourselves. And we start to get sort of like aggressive with ourselves and pushy and demanding. And we lock down even tighter. And we might make some change for a little bit, but more likely that change doesn't stick. And then when that change doesn't stick, we get even more frustrated and we push harder, and we tell ourselves things like, you need more discipline, more motivation, more commitment. And so we try to muscle that discipline. We try to muscle that motivation. We try to muscle that commitment. We look outside of ourselves and start comparing to other people who have what we want. Maybe we even try to learn from them, but it's kind of coming from a self-deprecating place. If only you could be better. Or we look at, images or stories of other people who have what we want, and we think, well, they must have the answer, so maybe I got to figure out and do what they did. And so maybe we try to go down that path, and we go on this search for more motivation, more discipline, or more information. And then when that doesn't work, we start to turn on ourselves. It's probably because you're not committed enough, or you don't have it in you, or you're just lazy or undisciplined. And we start to get self-critical. So our frustration turns into self-criticism, and we point out all the flaws in ourselves for why we can't, and we keep a running list of all the times we have not followed through and all of the things that keep us from our ability to follow through, and we get further and further down the emotional ladder. And when then that doesn't work, then we can get really mean in hopes that just maybe if we're mean enough or harsh enough or disciplined enough or tough enough, maybe we'll change. And sometimes we do, and that's the trick of it. Sometimes it works for a minute, and then it doesn't work anymore. And either the cycle starts over or we give up. But we don't really give up, right? We don't really give up. We tell ourselves that we give up, but somewhere deeper down, that thing we want is still there, and that creates a lot of pain. It creates a sense of defeatedness, and it creates like a feeling of loss, and self-betrayal. And so we can stay in any of these places for minutes, months, weeks, days, years, lifetimes. But the whole thing is messed up, right? I had one of my favorite quotes is that if self-criticism worked, it would have worked by now. And we hear that logically, but then we don't really buy into it because there's a part of us that believes, for whatever reason, that if we let go, if we're easier on ourselves, we'll never get what we want. Somewhere along the way, we all picked up the message that if you're hard on yourself, you'll do well. And I never wanted to believe that that wasn't true because I was just too afraid that if I was easy on myself, I would not create what I wanted. I wouldn't take the action. I wouldn't do what I wanted to because I had evidence of that. I had evidence that when I wasn't hard on myself, I just kicked my feet up and did nothing. But what I didn't realize is that it's not either you're hard on yourself or you kick your feet up and do nothing. That had only been my experience. I didn't know that there was actually this third option that was what we hear of as like self-love, but felt too soft and too nice and too passive for me. But I did not know that love isn't nice and love isn't passive. Real, true self-love is kind, but it isn't nice. It's honest. It's really honest. And I think that true self-love, not the kind of that's like take a bubble bath and go for a walk, which are part of it. That's more like self-care, I suppose. But real self-love is a little grittier. And for me, self-love, like the gritty kind of self-love, is actually how we make change when we're stuck. Not discipline, not force, not motivation, not commitment. Those things only work when real self-love is at the foundation. And so it's like you've been on this path trying these things that hasn't been working, but you didn't start far back enough on the path to really understand how these things worked, right? So sometimes discipline is necessary. Sometimes even being a little tough on yourself is necessary, not critical, that's different. Being a little tough on yourself is necessary. Sometimes you do need to recommit. Sometimes you do need a little bit of outside motivation or a couple more steps of information from someone who's further on the path. But none of those things actually work if you don't first root yourself in gritty, real self-love. And real gritty self-love first starts with awareness. And a lot of the times we are aware of the fact that we don't have what we want, or we are aware that we're out of alignment with what we say we want to do. But I'm talking about a different kind of awareness. This is like the awareness that I just described is a little bit more like the mean grandma or, school teacher who's pointing out all your mistakes. The awareness that I'm talking about, my dog is literally trying to rip a tree out of the ground right now. The awareness that I'm talking about is like the awareness that I have sitting right here in this park, right? It would be weird if I looked around and I started to pinpoint all the things about the park I didn't like. I could do that, but it would be weird and it wouldn't really change anything. But the awareness that I'm talking about is where I'm sitting on this bench and I can sit back and I can see in front of me all these different kinds of trees and a stream, and I can hear all the birds chirping around me. And I can hear my dog trying to rip a tree out of the ground, 50 feet to my right. But if I slow down even more, I can see leaves floating in the stream, and I can see the differentiation and the different colors of green in the trees. And if I slow down, I can hear, maybe 10 different kinds of birds. And then I can smell 3 to 5 different scents. And I can feel a little bit of cool air on my skin or a slightly itchy ankle. Maybe a little bit that I'm hungry. And so the awareness that I'm talking about is a little bit more all-encompassing. It takes in every aspect of my surrounding, not just the bench I'm sitting on or the fact that I feel a little bit cold right now. It's so much more all-encompassing. And that's the kind of awareness that I'm talking about that is the initiator for the kind of self-love that's gritty but also leads to the kind of change you want to make. Because One of the changes that I've struggled with my entire life is changing my body and really kind of sticking, not kind of, really sticking to a healthy lifestyle. And sticking is actually the wrong word. Sticking to a healthy lifestyle doesn't even make sense because that comes from the kind of forced change that I was talking about. Embracing, integrating, really becoming a healthy lifestyle that doesn't require sticking at all. But I need to build first awareness as to why I'm not. What's going on inside of me that has me struggling so much to stick to this? What's going on in my environment that actually works against me? What matters to me that I'm not including? You know, when I thought about changing my body, I always think about changing my diet and changing my exercise. And so I do something really intense or I don't, and I miss the awareness that that doesn't work for me. It doesn't feel good at any point in the journey. I miss the point that it really matters to me that I'm able to incorporate the social aspects of my life that I really love that work in complete opposition to the thing I think I want, the path I need to take. I miss the fact that it doesn't work for me to work out really, really intensely all the time or to always be in a gym. Sometimes I want to dance or go for a walk or do animal flow or yoga or things that don't feel like they're enough. And I just block all of that out because it doesn't look like the path I've been told to take. So your awareness, or let me add one more, it ignores the fact that there's some sort of like deep shame and pain in me and frustration and fear that I need to also bring into the equation. And so awareness has to bring you into, you have to get really, really practiced and paying attention to all the stuff that you're ignoring. And the really, really subtle ways in which you go off the path you think you're supposed to take. For example, if I tell myself that I'm going to work out at 5 a.m., but I don't, and then 3 p.m. rolls around and I notice that actually that's the time of day I feel like I really do want to exercise, that's important information to become aware of that I would probably miss without building that practice of awareness. And awareness is the precursor to honesty. Honesty is the second part of the gritty kind of self-love that actually allows you to be disciplined in the way that you want and committed in the way that you want to make the change that you want. I need to be honest with myself. And in honesty that I'm talking about is the opposite of criticism. Because I can be honest and critical, or I can be honest and kind. If I'm honest and critical, I'd say something like, when you don't work out in the morning, you'll never work out during the day. That's honest and critical because it comes from a place of self-judgment. It comes from a place of frustration. But if I actually am really honest with myself, that's not even true. That's not even true. There are plenty of times where I have worked out. In fact, I prefer to work out later in the day. I just don't allow myself to make time. So the kind of honesty that I'm talking about comes from a deeper place. It comes from a place that would take that criticism a few steps further, not further in a mean way, but further back and like, is that really true? What else is also true? It's the kind of honesty that says, yeah, Vanessa, you've gained 15 pounds. It's not the one that says you're a fucking fat ass, right? It's you need to take better care of yourself. It's the one that says, you're not really doing what you say you would do, and that doesn't feel good. It's not saying you never do what you say you'll do. It's the one that owns its mistakes. It's the one that wants to hide. I'm just continuing to use the food thing, but this could show up in so many ways. That, wants to hide the fact that I ate a bag of pretzels from my husband, but then tells him, because I don't want to be the kind of person that hides from that, but doesn't do it in a way that's confessing some sin. It's that, hey, I want to be honest because honesty is where I grow. It's where I actually can access the change I want to make. So honesty that's kind and not critical has to come from awareness. If you don't have that awareness, you can't be honest in that way. So once I'm honest, then I can start to pay attention to what's in integrity. Integrity matters so much because integrity is where I know whether or not I'm in alignment with the things that are honest and that are true for me. And when I can start to use integrity as a guideline, it feels bad to not do what I say I wanted to do. Not because I think I'm bad, because once you start to understand what integrity feels like, integrity feels clean. When we're in integrity with ourselves and with the things we want, we don't feel a sense of anxiousness. One of the biggest lessons I've learned as an entrepreneur is that when I think I really need success, when I think I really need to make money, when I think I need to take an insane amount of massive action, actually what I really need is just to take those little tiny actions that I kept saying I've been taking and I've been avoiding. Because once I take those, I feel settled, I feel clean, because I'm back in integrity. And I noticed that any time that I want to change and I start to feel that harsh critical discipline pull up, what I need is to slow down and build awareness. Where am I out of integrity? And then be honest about the fact that I have, and then get back into integrity by taking these small, tiny actions. And when I do that, that anxiousness settles down, that urgency settles down. And when those two things settle down, then it becomes a little bit more obvious what I need to do next. And usually the thing I need to do next isn't like lose 20 pounds today or make $1 million tomorrow or, whatever. It's some small action that is doable and makes sense. But I can't get to any of those places if I don't have first awareness, honesty, and then integrity. And then, of course, action. Nothing we want comes without any action. But the action that we want to take makes more sense when it comes from these places that I'm talking about before. And it's important to note, at least for me, compulsiveness, like a compulsive, needy, urgent energy, is usually a sign that I'm not coming from the gritty place of self-love. For other people, that sense of compulsion and urgency shows up as shame or guilt or frustration or a sense of entitlement or feeling martyred or unfair or unjust. Anything like that is usually a sign that you're kind of coming from the wrong place. Or at least not the wrong place, it's ineffective. It's just the ineffective place. It just doesn't work. And that's something that helped me too. It was like, I was afraid to go into this place of more gentle discipline, more like kind self-love, because I honestly didn't believe that it worked. But I also saw that what I was doing, it just didn't work. It's simply ineffective to be critical and hard on yourself. And so shifting to that other space was an experiment. I was like, all right, let me give it a try. And as I did that, I started to see more of like, oh yeah, I have all these ideas that actually don't make sense. And one other thing that I'll notice is that if you're doing all this stuff and it's not working, all this stuff on the outside, it's probably time to look on the inside and figure out, like, how am I thinking about this that isn't working? What are the things that I really, really believe to be true that are frustrating me? And go journal about those. I know that's like so overused and seems so cliche, but it works so well. To just write or have a conversation with someone or get coached by somebody who can ask you lots of probing questions that challenge and inquire into the ideas that you have that are keeping you stuck. Because when action doesn't work, introspection is usually a really, really good tool. And if you think that you've introspected enough and you still can't take action, you might want to look a little deeper. So that is my longer answer that I have discovered in the years since I have, 2 years, whatever, since I shot that original video, that actually takes this even deeper. So I hope this was helpful for you. I'd love to hear more questions if you have them below. If share more, even another video in this that would help you, I'm more than happy to do it. In the end, what I'll say is that criticism, harshness with yourself, discipline in a really mean way, it just simply doesn't work. And if you still doubt that, then I invite you to consider the idea that you want to change somebody else, that you're trying to help somebody else change. Maybe you're doing this in your life somewhere, and you're doing it in the same way to them that you would behave to you. Do you think that they would change? Probably not. And if you are doing that to somebody in your life, take a step back and notice if it's working or not. It probably isn't. So if anything else, it just doesn't work to be harsh with yourself. I think that's it. So maybe try something different.